last week, I thought we recorded the whole thing, but it only submitted 20 minutes of it.
Well, it showed live last week. I remember seeing live right away.
So
yeah, I seen it live the whole entire time. So I
So did
don't know why.
But it says it now. So go ahead.
Okay. Well, thanks for the patience there, guys. I apologize. Won't happen next time, I guess. And thanks, Jason, for starting this. Do we have any volunteers for opening prayer?
Sure.
All right. Thank you, Jason.
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for this opportunity to learn and to grow and to have this time to come together as a group and be able to discuss the lessons today. We ask to always help and guide us and direct us that we can move swiftly and quickly through the lesson, and we gain understanding and knowledge because of gathering together. We ask you to bless Cody and Jesse and Tina and I as we come together, that we'll be able to be guided by thee, be able to complete the lessons and understanding them and come to the conclusion that we need to. Help us in this best name, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
So I want to say thanks, Jason, for last week's discussion board, figuring out that the lowest number was the best number. Because I saw the follow-up post where that actually came out, and the teacher, Brother Sands, said that if you got a 0, that's like the best number. The lowest number is the best one. So thanks for pointing that out.
Well, it took me a few minutes to figure it out, but I wanted to know what was good and what was not good, and I figured, well, the lower number is the better one that you want.
Yeah.
So kudos to you for doing good.
Yeah. I was amazed, too, when looking at other people's discussion boards, how far their numbers were different than ours, too.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know, because I saw one group where they averaged like 15, and I'm like, wow, we weren't even anywhere close to that. So it almost told me they took everything and did the exact opposite of what we did, and what the experts did, because we were pretty close to the experts.
That's how it ended up. Yeah.
I figured that, or they didn't understand how to calculate the number correctly. I figured it was going to be one or the other. Yeah, some of those numbers were like, wow, that's interesting.
How did you get there?
Well, I guess if you took the absolute value of every number and added them, after you absolute valued them, you couldn't get a 15 out of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so.
But I guess in math, you don't absolute value to the answer unless it tells you to do it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, anyway, good job, guys. So this week, I thought was a very interesting lesson. So let me just go over the quick synopsis for you. So it is the coach of Army crew team at the United States Military Academy at West Point faced a dilemma about how to foster team performance. At the start of a crew season, he had used objective data on individual performance to select his top 8 rowers for the varsity crew, and then the second tier of 8 rowers for the junior varsity crew. And the two crews one another at practice. However, the JV crew beat the varsity crew about 2/3 of the time. The case follows the coach's attempts to determine the causes of these aberrant results. By the end of the season, the varsity was still mirrored in a downward spiral with only 1 week to go before the season's ending national race. The coach must decide what action to take to help the varsity's crew's members pull together to reach their potential as a team. So through the agenda that I had, I picked just a couple of different questions that I thought would be really good for us to discuss. I think as a group of already, we've gotten a lot of understanding of how each other work, especially with this one being the third one. So before we start that, though, does anyone have any comments, any questions, any concerns they want to bring up right now before we start the rest of the discussion board?
I thought this was interesting because last winter, in one of my other classes, we did the same case study.
Okay.
I mean, we didn't meet as a group on it, but I had to read it. I had to write up a case study on it. But I just thought it was interesting to see it again. It was like didn't take very long to remember what was going on. So
Pretty much just copy and paste. I'm just joking.
No,
probably could, but
he gets a chance
I
to
could rewrite
refine
it.
If you didn't get an A last time, you will get one this one. No, I thought it was just interesting of his deductive reasoning for trying to solve problems. It was kind of interesting.
Yeah,
But he-
I thought he waited too late to try to have a group conference too.
Oh yeah,
And
you don't wait till the day before nationals to try to
No.
solve a problem.
plus the fact I don't think he really even solved anything. I don't think he gave them an opportunity, or he didn't interject to help them solve the problem. He just tried to let them fight it out to solve it themselves and didn't interject.
Yeah, he probably should have been better off just locking him in a room and let him punch it out, right? Than letting him walk off.
Yeah.
So I wonder if he was in so much shock by what had just happened that he didn't know really how to proceed with it, especially with all 8 people just all blowing up in each other's faces. So
But I don't.
Well-
That shouldn't be, because he is a veteran, what they called it, coach, isn't he?
Yeah, he was a veteran coach, and he's military, and he even brought people in to try to help, you know, as the team called it, the touchy-feely stuff to try to figure it out. But that meeting where he brought everybody together at the table, that needed to happen, you know, closer to the beginning of the season, not at the end, and telling them you got to work it out. But who's the leader? Who's holding that team together? Because that's you know really what it was there.
Well, the coach also had a psychology degree.
Yeah,
And so it was surprising to me that he never, I mean, he acted more like he was shocked during the whole entire experience instead of actually trying to help that team out.
I wonder
you-
though if the team members didn't divulge enough information, all the tests and all the psych evals with all the touchy-feely stuff. Like it wasn't until the end till that guy like walked a few paces away, turned around and started yelling and saying, "I carry the team on my shoulders. I do this," and then it got cascaded from there. I wonder if team members were holding back the most important information. Does that make sense? Granted, the coach I think could have saw some things and should have realized, hey, these team people aren't working as a team. But I wonder if it's also part of the fault for the people not expressing the issues earlier.
Yeah, I think that is. They're one of the positions in it is that last seat, which is that coxswain.
oh yeah,
Whoever that is needs to be shifted, because he should have been able to control everybody, at least while they were rowing. And
yeah. I guess I saw two things: that the coxswain wasn't, you know, pointing out or talking to the coach or helping that part of the process. And then I also thought, well, who's their captain? Because it says the captain's in seat number 8, I think it was. And so where was the captain of their team? Why wasn't the you know, because the captain has a leadership role too. So I kind of looked to give the coxswain and the captain, and between the two of them, they should be bringing that team together to function.
but yet they didn't.
But they didn't. So then was there no? And then I think I saw in part of it where it said there was no real leadership of that team. And then they could put somebody on the junior varsity team, you know, swap 2 people, and the junior varsity team did even better. And even when they did their cheers and stuff, they were more succinct and to the point, and just more focused.
Yeah, I wonder if there was too many hats in the village. Basically, they all thought they were leaders or all in some type of position. I remember in one comment, there was one guy who said was below ranked than the rest, and he felt inadequate to be with them. And so I wonder if everyone just thought they were the boss, and then no one else was doing as much. There was definitely a lot of egos going on. So I just wonder if everyone thought they were the boss, but no one would truly recognize the real leader or the real captain of the seat. So
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that the junior varsity, they felt like they had nothing to lose. And so they were just out there, I think, more to have fun. And I think that's why they got along so good, is because they didn't feel like they had the stress on their shoulders as varsity to get the job done. But the varsity, I think there was way too many people in there that wanted to be leaders, but didn't know how to be a leader.
yeah, I guess if you can think of it this way, if you're hoping to get on varsity and then you get cut down to JV, that's automatically like an ego hit. That's automatically like a knock to your characteristics. So maybe they were humble enough that when they did come together, they realized that, hey, this is the team that I should be on, or this is where I want to be or need to be. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Well, you always have an ego till you lose once.
Yeah.
And I think that's what they had. The varsity had this ego that I'm untouchable by myself. I'm untouchable.
Right.
JV already understood that they're not the best by themselves. So together, let's be the best together.
Yeah.
And because they had nothing to lose, so why not leave it all out there?
Agreed. So the first question that we had was, what are the specific behaviors, action, and results that raise concern? So we can just go ahead and say that all those things that we just talked about answer that question. Like the behaviors of ego, the behaviors of not listening, the behaviors of the coach not intervening early enough, and then obviously the fact that JV beats varsity 75% of the time, and then nationals are 4 days away. Yeah, go ahead, Tina.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say, when you look at that, the captain just waited too long. He was, waited too long to, the 4 days before, and he's gonna call them together and go, you know, what's up? Why aren't you guys getting this?
Yeah, so the next question actually I have is, does Coach P have the right measures in place? So I want to preface that with, if he's done this long enough, I think he has the right measures in place, but I think this is the first time where those measures have actually been challenged, I guess you would say, or are not working the way they're supposed to. So does that make sense?
Yeah.
I think he had the right measures for creating which person is the best for that seat individually, but I don't believe that he had the best measures for that seat collectively as a group.
Yeah, he was good at measuring a person's physical endurance, but not their leadership.
Yeah, I don't think he quite knew how to pull the team together and get rid of the issues. I don't think even though he had a psychology degree, don't think that he knew how to pull those individuals together to create a stronger team with all their diversity.
Okay, so with that, what measures do you think he should add to the way he does things to make sure that this doesn't happen in the future?
In the case study, it said how he consisted of the first 8, and that with the exception of these 2 strong people, he shifted over to the other one. Am I saying it right?
Yeah, I think so.
I think the element that he needs to do, instead of doing them individually, which one is the strongest, put them together and then test them as which 4 or which 8 can work the best.
Well, and he may even have to do an interview process and find out about, not just the physical part, but an actual interview, find out what their leadership is, and do they want a leadership role? Because if they don't want a leadership role, you can't really put them in the captain's seat or the coxswain seat either.
Some of the best leaders are the ones that don't want to be leaders, while the people that want to be leaders are sometimes the worst leaders.
I've seen that too.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And I think that's why the JV team understood that is they had to communicate, and some of the best leaders are going to understand the weaknesses of others and not exploit them, but help them.
Well, it brought up in the case study that one of the benefits that the JV had was instead of singling one person out and saying, hey, dude, you got to do this different, they would bring it up in the group and say, okay, we need to do this different instead of pulling out one individual. And because of the way they did it, it brought them closer as a team and it made them better. Where the varsity was just headed down the other direction.
Pointing fingers, yelling, screaming, walking away, not talking. Yeah.
Nobody will perform their best under those conditions.
No.
Yeah.
No, you're right.
So, Jason, I want to touch back to something that you touched upon. So would the interview process to figure out how they would work socially with other people, would that be before or after the coach finds out if they're like physically the best 8 or the lower 8?
I would say that very beginning, before you took it, before you even pulled out the oar, figure out how they're going to interact with each other. Figure out who's going to go up to each other and build each other up, or who's going to puff themselves up, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say in the very beginning, before you pull an oar out.
Yeah, I would agree, because generally probably what they're going to do is, start with some strength training and other things. And that would probably be more of an area to see whose personalities are going to work better. You can get an idea of how they perform and do those interviews then, because of course they're going to have a pre-off season before they jump into this.
Well, and if they're, and I was thinking too, if they're doing their erg, and doing all that stuff that they're working out, they should be working out together. And if they're going in and working out individually and not together and spotting each other, that tells you a lot about them before you even get an oar in the water.
Right.
Yeah, it's who's going to encourage who and who's going to push who. Granted, one on those tests, one is actually working. But are the other 7, are they supporting them and encouraging them and pushing them in a positive manner, or are they just off on their own trying to beat that person?
I think there's definitely environment opportunities there for the coach to figure out who would be a good leader for a particular group without having to jump in the water and say, let's duke it out.
So what type of test would you guys consider that they do, that he does?
What would you call it? You mean like qualitative or quantitative?
Well, like, would you do like having someone, fall off of a stool and have the other 8 catch them, or, or would you do like, I don't know, like, would you just observe them and do like a couple different workouts to see who gravitated to who, or if they did spot each other, or what type of things would you guys specifically?
Well, I think you could do something like that, and I think there's an assessment that could be done too. There's a really good one that I've done called Strength Finders 2.0, and at the end of that, you get to know what a person's like top 5 strengths are, and so it could give you an idea of where a person needs, what their strengths are, and then you could build your team based on their strengths, and that talks more about, what type of things a person has. Like I can tell you, like mine, some of mine's like being a learner. I'm trying to remember what the other, but it tells you that type of thing, so you would know based on those type of skills where would you put somebody. Because I thought it was interesting when it was talking about like seats 7 and 8 weren't as important as seats 5 and 6 on the boat for being the motor and working together. But you've got to find a way for that team to work together because there's no MVP. So you can't have one person try to lead the whole team, or one person to lead, but you can't have one person try to row the boat faster than anybody else.
Okay. Do you think there's any measures or anything that he should remove from the way he does testing and how he comprises a team?
Well, I didn't quite understand, and maybe I don't know. Well, I don't know if I'd go as far as I wouldn't agree with it, but I don't understand his total process for the seat racing that he did with boat A and boat B and measuring this and that one. I could understand how to tell one or two, but I think he's making it quite complicated. He's finding out the best individuals, but I think in rowing you're trying to find the best team.
Yeah, that's the part he's missing. He's missing the part that makes them a team.
So I guess the seat racing section on page 5, I think that would, if anything's going to go, it's going to, my opinion is that.
Well, it's just like a story I heard many years ago about two horses. I mean, there were two champion horses that did horse pulls, and each one of them could pull a very significant amount. They one could pull like 6,000 pounds, the other could do like 7. But they found that when they put them together, as long as they could work together, these two horses together would pull 7,000 pounds, which was far beyond anything they could do individually. But it's because they worked off of each other. And that's what a team does, is it works off of each other. It's just like a football team. I mean, everybody works off of each other and keeps everybody motivated. And in this case, it was just the opposite. Because of all the bickering and everything, it was creating the team to fall apart. But by looking at how they interacted with each other, that interacted the best, it's probably where they would get the best team out of.
Yeah, would agree.
So just out of curiosity, do you think that the teams would still be the way they are now, even if he did everything that we've been talking about the last half an hour?
Not necessarily, because you would be surprised that how personalities, some personalities are a little more dominant than others, but there's situations where they kind of mesh together a lot easier. And it may not turn out the same. I mean, especially at the beginning, but we're kind of looking at what's happened after the end of this. And of course, at the end, you're going, well, I don't know how they could even think of, being a group. But, at the beginning, it would have been a lot different. I think they probably could have worked something out.
It would have been interesting to see kind of an experiment. I've thought about if they did this. You had the dock, you had a boat on each side, oars on each where they're supposed to go, and let all 16 rowers walk out there and say, "Get in a boat," and watch to see where they go. They naturally would want to go to their most comfortable spot, or the one they're strongest in, and to see how they actually got in the boat and who they got in with and where they got. I think would be a really interesting test to have. And if they couldn't get in the boat and get 8 people in the boat, that's not a team.
Right.
That's kind of true. It's almost like they needed some kind of team building event even before they got in the boat. And who cares if and the coach actually needed to make sure it didn't matter if you were varsity or junior varsity, you were all part of the Army team.
Yeah. How much do you think does that hurt people? You say yes, they're part of the Army team, but one's the varsity, one's JV. Does that carry a connotation with it?
It could. I've seen it happen before. Because you didn't get to be in the number 1 slot. You're only junior varsity. Sorry.
And I've seen that affect some individuals because they didn't qualify for what they thought was the better team, but they excelled well in the team that they were on, but they didn't view that way for themselves.
Do you think that plays in the military?
Yeah.
Oh, I think it could.
Oh, I'm sure it probably does.
You train to be the best, and then you get knocked down to second place. Yeah, I'm. Wouldn't be surprised.
Well, and you already figure these guys are going to West Point, so they're already considered like cream of the crop, anyways. And then you still got to, you still got that interplay between the two groups. So, are you going to be the number 1 group? Or are you going to be the number 2 group?
I think the fact that the people in JV were cut down to JV helped a lot for them to get over their egos, and help them become more synergized and help them make the better team. So the next question I had that I want to make sure we have plenty of time for everything is what was it? Sorry. Okay, what changes, if any, did Coach P take to rectify the situation for the upcoming finals in 4 days?
I think he did too little, too late.
The only change that I could ever see him making at this point, knowing that too little is too late, is he either flips the entire 2 teams or does nothing. Now, to flip the entire teams, you would actually have to look at the best overall time race. So if it took on a 200 stroke or whatever, 2,000 meter race, if JV actually had a better time, consistent better time, which I would say they did, then they would go and race in the varsity spot at the stretch. But
I agree.
To flip one player, he proved that he did that, and it made each one made the varsity team worse, but yet the JV stronger.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting that you could take the person from the other team, put them on the JV team, and it made them stronger. But then that just goes to show that part of that team had a different spirit, different outcome, so they were willing to work together to, succeed.
Which would say that they created, and correct me if I'm wrong, that JV had created a unified team, which had got them to pull more than they individually could.
Yeah,
Right.
It almost goes along with the story of the horses. They worked together. They succeeded better than they could by themselves.
Well, if you are the lone wolf going to a different team and this team performs, you're not going to be the person that doesn't perform. So you're going to give your best to make yourself not look good. So I think that's one of the things that when he switched the 1 seats caused it to happen. And besides, you're not around a bunch of people that you hate. You're around a bunch of new people. So more than likely there wasn't any issues. But would that one person being on the JV team when they went to nationals, would that actually be beneficial, because the JV team is no longer the JV team? It's now the 7 members of the J team plus some guy from varsity. Does that make sense?
That would be an interesting flip to figure out which one of the 7 can pull down to the JV team, make that the varsity team, which configuration would be the fastest. That would be an interesting task, but I don't know if he's got the time to do that.
I don't think he's got the time to do it. They're only 4 days ahead of him. I mean, you would talk about exhaustion and everything else you'd have to go through to get that team to happen.
Yeah, I think that would have been something that should have took place at the beginning of the year, not the end of the year, because there ain't enough time to make it work.
So my personal opinion about it is, I think that he should. Well, let me step back here. If you're not looking, just look at like the varsity team and the JV team for rowing, but if you look at the whole rowing team as a group or an organization, or even West Point as an organization, wouldn't you want to do what's best for West Point? So I think what the best thing for West Point would be is switch the teams completely. And because if the 8 JV people are now realize they're now expected to do more than they were ever expected to do before, and you kept them as a group, I think they would still go ahead, and I think they would perform even better because they're like, oh, now we're the varsity team. Now we're going to finals. This is something we weren't expecting, but we're going to meet up to the task. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think they could play. I think they could handle it. I think they were in a situation where they'd be able to do it.
And why is that, Jesse?
I would say the reason why is because they have grown together as a team, and they have learned to work together, and that's the reason why they're going to excel, is because they already know everybody's strengths and abilities and shortcomings. So, but when they sit in that boat together, they know how to make it work.
I like that. Thank you. Any other comments on that? Go ahead, Jason.
I'm just trying to find the phrase where it.
Oh yeah, the like their little team cheer that they did when they did their huddle.
One test you asked earlier, sorry to backtrack, but which things would you change? If in there he says he did do some type of team builder or team disruptor. That probably needed to be reevaluated, and that matrix taken more into consideration.
Yeah, because one of them, it said too that they realized that they had no leaders on the varsity team. I remember that too when I was reading it.
Yeah, there were no leaders. They were just mostly disruptors.
Yeah.
Where on the varsity team or junior varsity, there really weren't any leaders, nor were any disruptors. They just learned how to work together.
Yeah, because he did a lot of focus on his individual strength and endurance.
So the other question that we have, the last one is what things did you guys read in this readings, basically like in the trusting book, that we could apply to this case study, as well as apply to church, school, life, families, work? Like, what are some of the insights that you guys have gained from both this and this week's reading?
Well, I think one of the things he needed to do was initially set up what the expectations are, for the team, not just the individuals, but for the team and working together. That wasn't done at the very beginning. And when you don't set those expectations from the beginning, you start getting this kind of mess that he created here.
I agree. I think when he started more on an individual basis instead of let's start out as a team.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're right.
One thing I don't know, I've sat in a couple meetings this week, as I sit with them every week, and if there is a conflict, whether in our personal lives at home or whether between us in this meeting, those have to be resolved and clarified and talked about, and then built the bridge and got over them before any work or progress could be made as a group. So before we can make any decisions, we had to come together as a team. I remember reading somewhere in the scriptures or talks about when they were translating the Book of Mormon Doctrine and Covenants type of a deal. I think it was Book of Mormon. And Joseph Smith lost the ability to translate because of a disruption that him and Emma had.
Uh-huh. I remember reading that too.
And Joseph had to fix that problem before he could make any other spiritual progress. This varsity team should have their differences. They won't put them aside and come together as a group, and they won't work through individual problems. Therefore, they're not going to come together. So in life, as I sit in these meetings, way too early on Sunday, way too late on Sunday, and way too late on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. Decisions can't be made, and the Spirit can't be felt, and it will not, has not confirmed truth if there is a disagreement.
Yeah.
So we've the four of us that are in that meeting have had to literally step out of that meeting, change our behavior, change our individual thinking, repent, so to speak, and come back together as a team with the same common goal, and then come together to figure out how to get there.
Yeah, well, and I found it interesting too in taking the Living Prophets class that all 15 men of the presidency have to agree about what gets put out. You can't have somebody go, well, whatever, or abstain or anything like that. All 15 have to agree before anything comes out, like the family proclamation and some of the other things that we see. So when you've got a team that's not interacting, you're not going to have that come together to do what needs to be done.
Taking it one step further, Cody, as I meet with my wife and I do things try to make $1 stretch throughout 7 days. If one of us tries to do something on our own, thinking we know what's best for the both of us, it doesn't work. So while there's individual roles, we have to respect each other as a husband and wife, as a couple, to lead and to guide and to understand and to support each other.
Yeah, because if you go back to our book, this team doesn't have respect or trust in each other.
No, there's nothing there between them. Nobody wants to work together because they don't care about each other.
But one thing I find interesting is that I think humility plays a lot into this specific case study, but also like with Jason, what you said about the husband and wives working together, being humble enough to realize that it's not just me, but it's us. And then also, I was thinking about Jim Collins' book Good to Great that I had to read for a class, and it talks about how the best leaders are usually those people that are humble and don't really take like the praise for themselves.
Right.
And
they want their team to have the praise.
Yeah. So, and I think from this case that we can learn is if we're humble enough and then we respect the other person enough, then our team will be more of a solid team. I'm not going to say a completely solid team, but a pretty solid team to accomplish the requirements that we have. I think just applying those two principles, the varsity team could have become amazing by just humbling each other or humbling themselves, and then also starting to respect the other person.
And I do not think that in rowing that the ultimate leader or team captain has to sit in that number 8 seat. I really don't.
I kind of agree with you. I don't think they'd have to sit there either, because we've seen people that lead. They may not even have the title of leader, but they are the leader of the group. And this group doesn't have that.
Some time ago, there was one of the classes you had to take was it talked about President Clark's leadership with a small L.
Mm-hmm.
And the bishop may lead and guide that ward. Well, maybe the face of it and take responsibility for it and held accountable for it. But ultimately, in a ward, it's the ward council that leads and guides it.
Mm-hmm.
And you can have some really strong Relief Society presidents or primary presidents or Elders Quorum presidents be almost a better leader, but because of who they are. Doesn't mean they represent the ward, but can lead and guide the ward under the direction of the bishop or with the direction of the bishop. Because they understand their role and their calling.
I want to. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I want to know who's the captain or the leader of the JV team, or even if there is one, or if they all just take on the responsibility of being each other's brothers' keepers. Does that make sense?
Yeah, there was a comment. Let's see if I pulled it back up here. I like this comment. It was on page 7 of it, and it says from the JV perspective. Another read, "We have the confidence and the control to row our own race. We know how to win, and we will do it on our teams. We will succeed together. We will fail together." And yet another one said, "We are not rowing for ourselves, coach, or army crew. When push comes to shove in that last 1,000 meters, we're rowing for every guy in that boat because we don't want to let him down." Which I thought was a really interesting statement for the JV team.
So ultimately, who leads and guides that JV team is whoever believes that one.
Uh-huh.
Right.
That's who leads it. That's who's the captain.
It doesn't say which person or which seat the person holds, but basically when push comes to shove in that last 1,000 meters, we're rowing for every guy in that boat because we don't want to let him down.
It's pretty powerful stuff. I think it's awesome.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, that was the one statement that just like, this whole thing just was like, wow.
They truly had a sense of, I want to say charity, or maybe even love. They might not say love, but they really understood, like, he's my brother. I'm to watch over him. I'm there to go ahead, like you're saying, in ward councils, or even in our families, like, or in the organizations. I'm there for that person. Might not say that out loud, but if I have their back, then they'll have my back eventually, and therefore that just creates a better team.
Yeah. And and when the coach made him start sending the emails to him, and then really not dealing with the stuff that was going on between the team members and the complaints he was getting, he wasn't helping the situation. It was just making it brew even stronger the wrong direction.
Which makes it worse, Tina.
Uh-huh. It does.
If you say, bring up all the problems, so everybody's has actually taken a active part of finding and fault finding in others, but there is no resolution to that, you have just thrown match on kerosene.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you might as well have just thrown kerosene and gas on that fire and lit the match.
Oh, the match was already lit.
Yeah.
I believe you're right.
And he just added the fuel to the fire and just made it go up because, and I started reading after that one statement and then started reading all this about the complaints. I'm thinking, well, what did you do with this?
Which is interesting because in life, if you're not really wanting to solve the problem, get out of the way. Don't you dare ask.
Uh-huh.
What is the problem?
don't because all you're doing now with this email barrage that he sent was just adding the fuel, not doing anything about it, and it didn't help. In fact, I think it probably ultimately made things a lot worse.
At work, I have a wonderful boss, and he asks for problems. What is the problem? What is the problem? And there's 5 of us running this crew, and we tell him the problem, and he will not do anything about the answer.
Mm-hmm.
He knows the solution. He knows what needs to happen. He knows he needs to fire this person and fire this person. But he will not do it.
Yeah,
which
some
means
people
the
don't.
team will never get any better.
It'll never gel and come together.
Well, some people don't want it, no matter what leadership they're in. Some people don't want to deal with the conflict.
Yeah.
So don't ask.
Just flat out. It doesn't matter what level of leadership you're in. Some leaders don't want to deal with the conflict. They only want to deal with the good part of it.
And you can't just always deal with the rosy posies, because the grass is not always greener. It's just different fertilizer.
That's right.
And he got his grass because he played in the fertilizer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The rowing team captain, the JV team, they got down and dirty and just figured out how to work together with each other because they had nothing to lose.
But we get to tell them, sorry, you can't go rowing? Okay.
So
You're not the best, but you're on the team? Okay.
So I'm afraid that they're kind of stuck with what their choices tomorrow. There's not enough time to change them.
Yeah, the only change he can really ultimately make this close to the finales is to swap the teams and hope for the best.
Yeah, I would agree.
I wonder if the rowers from this year will go on to next year. Because if that's the case, and the varsity team does get knocked down to JV team with the switch, I wonder how that would improve their ego. Like how would that go ahead and help them realize, hey, we screwed up by not doing this one thing, which was becoming a team.
Well, they're going to have one of two reactions. They're going to run and say, Coach P is a jerk.
Yep.
How dare he demote me?
Mm-hmm.
How dare he cut me down? There was a talk years and years and years ago about the Bush.
Bush by Hubie Nibley.
Yeah, Hubie Nibley. I actually have an original copy of that. And how dare he been cut that little currant bush and down because he was so big. So that's what they're going to do. And so in response to what they're going to do next year, it really depends upon their reaction to being cut down.
Yeah.
I would think that some will probably leave, not want to come back to the team. Some will. There will be a few that will want to change their attitude and come back and want to be better. And so it's just going to depend on the outcome. Nobody can tell, but I'm sure that they're going to lose a few because of the way things transpired this time.
And the ones that stick around and understand that change that needed to happen and make the change, holy goodness, they will have a mighty powerful team to come if they're really as strong as it portrays them.
Yep, I believe you're right. The next year, they'll be quite a force.
Yeah, it'll do something. It'll make a difference in the team.
Definitely will. So, well, let's go ahead. It's been an hour. Does anyone have any final thoughts that they want to share? Final inputs that they want to share about the this varsity and JV teams competing and what we've read so far this week?
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for being a good leader.
Thanks,
This has
Jason.
worked out good.
getting that Google Hangouts working for us.
Alrighty, can we stop it then?
Yeah, you can stop it. So.
Yep.